the Levite, this is the man who had the wife, as he was going back home, he left late and he was not going to be able to get home in time. So instead of staying there where the Jebusites were, which is Jerusalem, which was the land of Benjamin, but the Benjaminites hadn't chased them out like they were supposed to, he goes on up to Gilead, which was of the Benjaminites. But we find in Judges, all the way back to chapter 1, verse 21, that the children of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusites who inhabited Jerusalem. So the Jebusites dwelt there in Jerusalem. And at this writing, and I believe that Samuel is the one who wrote this, the Benjaminites or the Jebusites were there to that day. We know by history that King David is the one who came and drove the Jebusites out of Jerusalem and established it as the nation. Know of any famous Benjaminites? We're going to talk more about these Benjaminites and their wickedness. Know any famous Benjaminites who were from the tribe of Benjamin? Who can help me? Saul. Which Saul? Saul who became Paul. Well, there was Saul who was the king of Israel, the first king. He was one, a Benjaminite. We have Saul whose name was changed to Paul, and you might not be aware of this, but he also was a Benjaminite. So we also find another famous one, and it didn't strike me until we start preparing this lesson. Back in Judges chapter 3, one of the judges, remember which judge might have been from the tribe of Benjamin? It was Ehud, the son of Gera, who was a Benjaminite. Now, you have to go back and review what he did to be famous. So there were some famous people about it. We're going to talk about the influence of the tribe of Benjamin in latter years, which is very interesting. But as we get to this lesson, here's two takeaways that I want us to hold on to or be thinking about ahead. And as I tell these takeaways, what I want you to be thinking about is how can we apply that to ourselves? Takeaway number one. We cannot support and stand or even defend wickedness. We can't do it. And number two, and this is the one that got me, we have to be careful that we do not become overzealous in trying to defeat wickedness. And I'll talk about that later as we get to that. So we're in Judges chapter 20, verse number 12. We find the tribe of Benjamin. All the other tribes, they've got this letter in the body part, and they've all come together to the tribe of Benjamin. And they ask him, what is this terrible, wicked thing that you've done? Those terrible, wicked men, this is verse 13, deliver them up. They're perverted. Bring them up from Gibeah that we may put to death and remove this evil from Israel. But the Benjaminites would not listen to the voice of their brethren. Instead, what they did, we find in verse number 14, the tribe of Benjamin gathered together and got ready to go to battle against their own brethren. Now, they've been told, they've been made very clear. You know what those guys did? They wanted to do this man. They didn't do that to the man, so they did to this woman. Now, they need to be brought out. Justice needs to be served. It did. And they said, no, not going to touch us. Leave us alone. We're going to go out to battle. We're going to protect our own. Proverbs 29, verse 1. It's got used several proverbs this morning, and in a great way. Proverbs speaks so clearly sometimes. 29, verse 1. He who is often rebuked and hardens his neck will suddenly be destroyed and without remedy. This is what's going to happen to the tribe of Benjamin. As they stiffen their neck and say, you're not going to touch us. We're going to do what we want to do. You can't move. Begin thinking, what was their motivation? Why did they want to be that way? And we really don't know. We don't know why they want to protect them, but perhaps it could have been that they hated that Levite. That Levite, as we already looked at last time we studied it, he told half-truths. He wasn't completely honest as he was telling all about it. So he's a liar. He's got a big mouth, and he wants to have his way, and we don't like him. It could have been that he was being belligerent, but one thing you know about him, he was brutal. What did he do? Terrible thing that he did. And they may have said, we just hate that man. And we're going to stand up and we're not going to bow to him at all. We're going to reject him. Could be that they were trying to protect their own. These men who did this terrible, awful deed to this young woman, could they have been the rulers there in Benjamin? One that had clout and had influence and said, well, hey, since he's your son, we're not going to, we'll protect him. We really don't know. We don't know. But what we do know is that they chose the wrong side, the side of wickedness. Now think about it. In today's world that we live in, there are those who will protect and they promote wickedness such as this perverted sin that took place there, do they not? I mean, it's right now, as we look coming up, what's going to take place in the future of our nation, there is much sin on the horizon. And I'll have to be honest with you, I hate the sin of homosexuality. I love those people, and I want to draw them, encourage them to come out. And those who will promote and stand up and say, oh, this is what you've got to be, it just really, really makes me angry. And that's where we'll get in a little bit about how can we go to the other side. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Verse number 15. Here the Benjamin of Israel, or the Benjaminites of the tribes of Israel, they were very skilled men in that there's a lot of them, 26,000 that drew swords. It's interesting. It gives the number of how many were there. You go back to the census that back in Numbers chapter 26, there's about a third less now than what there was before. Anybody have an idea why? Why would there be less at this time than what there was just a few years earlier? Well, they'd gone in to conquer the land, and as they conquered the land, there was casualties. So the ones who are left are going to be hardened warriors and soldiers. Describes them that they were left-handed. And people who are left-handed, they're in the right brain. Is that what you are, Alex? So they're left-handed. But it's interesting about being left-handed is that they could sling a stone. That they could use a slingshot. And you see there in the last part of verse 16, they were very accurate. Now, if I was to sling a stone, everyone in this room would be in danger, right? But they could hit it at a hair's breadth. I mean, and you look at the history of slingshotters or whatever, some extremely skilled ones. There was one nation of people, and it described what they would do is they would put the children's breakfast up on top of a pole. And the only way that they could get their breakfast down is to use a slingshot to knock it down to get their food. And they became very good at slingshot. That describes that they could take a 1-pound stone. Imagine this 1-pound stone. And now that's a cannonball, by the way. And they could sling it up to 90 to 100 miles an hour with lethal accuracy. It describes that some could sling a stone as much as 3 football fields long. That's a sniper, isn't it? That would be, you wouldn't see it coming. They were very trained, and they've been battling now. See, this is just right on the heels of them coming into the promised land and they're being able to battle. You remember David as he fought Goliath, and what did he use? Yeah, he used that slingshot, didn't he? So now we find the number of the Benjamites and the people of Israel, they've all come together to battle them. Verse 18, we find the children of Israel arose and they went up to God to ask God, what should we do? And which of us will go into battle first against Benjamin? And God said, tribe of Judah, you're to go first. Now, as we look at what's about to take place, it doesn't say why Judah, but perhaps it was because God was bringing judgment not only on, I say judgment, but judgment as in punishment, not only upon Benjamin and their sins, but also upon the other tribes of Israel. And Judah was going to be one of those. So they went out to battle against Benjamin. They went out to battle array. The Benjamites came out and they cut to the ground 22,000 men of the Israelites. That's in verse number 21. Can you see them as they lined up with their slingshots? Pow, 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 pow. How many stones did it take to kill 22,000 men? Well, they had plenty of stones, didn't they? And they were mowing them down. And as they backed off, you start thinking, what's taking place here? Verse 22, they came back and they encouraged themselves. They formed the battle line again. Verse 23, the children of Israel went up, and after this battle, they were whipped. They were whipped very well. They went out weeping to the Lord until evening. Describing here is a time that they humbled themselves to God. And they asked God again in verse 23, should we go up again to fight our brother of Benjamin? And God says, go up. He's not done with this punishment, this phase of judgment that's taking place. You're to go again. So the children of Israel, they came up against Benjamin. It says a second day, and this would be the second day of battle. It's not so much a consecutive days. This may have been a day, a few days later, and then another battle. There's not consecutive days, as we'll see as it's described through this text. And they go out against the second time, and this time the Benjaminites cut down, this last part of verse 25, 18,000 more of those of Israel who drew the sword. God punishing not just Benjamin, but the other ones as well. And we could look at the apostasy that takes place within the people of Israel. Verse 26, then we see that all the children of Israel, that is, all the people, they went up to the house of God and they wept. And they sat there before the Lord. And what were they doing? They were fasting. They fasted until evening. And they offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. So here they were. We're getting killed. These Benjaminites, they're monsters comes to battle. You know, what are we going to do? Again, do you really want us to go out against them again? And in their fasting, and fasting is done, we're going to be talking about that tonight, by the way, as we'll be looking at this evening's sermon. It'll be an interesting topic. Come and join us. The children of Israel, verse 27, asking God again. And it's interesting to note that they had the Ark of the Covenant there. They also had Phinehas. Phinehas would have been Aaron's grandson. So we're looking at this event was taking place within 20 years of the time of Joshua. So people, the people of Israel, they weren't hardly even settled into their homes yet as they were settling in that area. So you almost could date this well before a lot of the other events in the book of Judges. It's not chronological order, by the way. So here again, they ask God, here in verse number 28, shall I yet go to battle against the children of my brother Benjamin, or shall I cease? And God said, go up tomorrow, for I will deliver them into your hand. I'm going to let you win. Now, by this time, you have, and I didn't add the numbers, mathematicians, how many of the people of Israel have died? 20-something thousand, 18-something thousand. It's a lot of the Israelites have died at the hands of their brethren, the Benjaminites. And now God says, you're going to win. Verse 29, Israel establishes and sets an ambush for them. This is going to be the same strategy that we're going to find that took place, you remember, in Ai, where Ai had whipped them, and so what should we do? And Joshua said, okay, what we do is we'll go and we're going to attack the city. We're going to feint back and run. They'll draw them out of the city, and while the major warriors are out of the city chasing them, we'll have someone from the backside come in and attack the city, take the city, and then we'll turn around and we'll attack them. It's the same kind of strategy that was done then, and it worked quite well. So they set the ambush, verse number 3. It burst forth on Gibeah, and verse 35, the Lord defeated Benjamin before Israel. Now, they could say, yeah, we won the battle, but it was God who defeated the Benjaminites. And so as they attacked the city and they began running, and the Benjaminites said, we're going to whip them again. Let's get our rocks out. We're about to go chase them down again. And as they come out of the city, they draw them out. Other Israelites come in, and the city is taken. We find that they killed the city with the edge of the sword, verse 37. And there was a signal, verse number 38. And once they got the city conquered, they were to light a fire and smoke would come up. If you know about fires, you can put a lot of kind of things on fires to make a lot of smoke. They were making a lot of smoke coming out of the city. And they destroyed there in the city everyone. Man, woman, and child, they were all destroyed. Did God tell them to do that? No. You begin thinking, why did they destroy them? Now, as they came out, oh no, the city's taken. They all got around those guys and they could get their slingshots and things, and they attacked the Benjamites, and they began waylaying and destroying the other Benjamites. They were wiping them all out, destroying them all. Did God call them to do that? No. They were to inflict the punishment and draw punishment on them, but were they to completely annihilate and wipe them out? Verse 43, they surrounded the Benjamites and chased them and easily trampled them down as far as the front of Gibeah to the east. So as they were destroying them, they were completely destroying them. They weren't leaving anyone in any of the cities of the Benjaminites. There are some, though, verse 45, that fled toward the wilderness of the rock of Rimmon and found protection. Historian Josephus, you're familiar with that historian. Not that he's always accurate, but we can get a lot of insight from what he writes. He writes what took place is there was those of the warriors as the battle was closing in and they were wiping everyone out. They rallied among themselves and they pushed and they broke through and they fled to this place called Rimmon. Rimmon is a rock of a kind of a hill that you can observe people from all the way around and you can find protection. There was 600 of them. 600 fighting warriors that were able to escape. Verse 47. And they stayed there at the rock of Rimmon for 4 months. They weren't coming down. Now, again, so here we see the Benjaminites at this time. Of the whole tribe of Benjamin, there's only 600 men left. Again, our takeaway, you can't support wickedness. And that's what the Benjaminites were doing. But number two, we can't become overzealous in trying to defeat wickedness. Can't become so zealous that we say, I hate wickedness. And I do. I hate wickedness so much. But I stand out and I do things that would be hurtful for the cause of Christ. And I have. And I'm not going to back up. In my stance for homosexuality, it is a sin. And I desperately want people to turn away from their sin. But I can say things. I could post on Facebook. I don't do Facebook. I don't do social media. But I could do things like that and cause division and cause hurt that will do nothing but be hurtful for the cause of Christ. Being our two takeaways. Now, we come to, and again, your job is going to find application to those two takeaways, and we can add to it in a little bit. And you can have some other takeaways when we get to the end of the lesson, but we're not to the end of the lesson yet, are we? Because we have a problem. There's 600 Benjamite men, and if they were soldiers, they would be young, strong, healthy men, not like some of us older men, right? They would be young and ready to just have a family. Can you imagine? Here they were. They could look back and say, well, back there in Gibeah, my wife and 3 little children are all dead. What are we going to do? Under the old law, people of Israel, who were they to intermarry among? Israelites. What we find in Judges chapter 21, these people who were so zealous and so upset, they killed a lot of us. Boy, we're going to come in and we're going to wipe them out. Tell you what, we're going to wipe them out, and we're not going to let a single one of them have one of our daughters in marriage. We make an oath to God. Have we found some other oaths here that people have made in the book of Judges that they go back and they go, oh boy, we shouldn't have done that one. So they'd made an oath that they weren't going to give their daughters, and they realized, what have we done? These 600 men, all that's left, and the tribe of Benjamin is going to be completely gone. There will be no one left of the tribe of Benjamin. And as they began seeing that reality, verse number 2, they lifted up their voices and they wept bitterly. Now, different commentators, I think this is Matthew Henry, that stated that here these same people, as they went and conquered Canaan, and God gave the instruction, you are to destroy everyone because they're all wicked and don't leave any influence behind. Did they destroy everyone? No. But when it came to look at their own family, own brethren, the Benjamites, they were unwilling to spare anyone. And again, not by God's command. God didn't command them to destroy them all, but by their own, this is the way he words it, by their own rash, irresponsible oath. Men are commonly more zealous to support their own authority than that of God. And that's what they were. They were just so bent upon it that they were unwilling to, just so angry in the destruction and the hurt they did. And why? Well, they'd gone beyond the Word of God and what God had called for them to do. And the divine order was to punish them, but not to destroy them like they did. So verse number 4, they have a dilemma. We got these 6 young men that's hiding up here on top of this rock in Rimmon. We can't get really near them because they got those stones. They can still sling those stones. But what are we going to do for them? Because we don't want to completely destroy that tribe. And they asked themselves in verse number 5. Remember, all of Israel came out to battle the Benjamites. Everyone said, was there anybody that didn't come join the battle? There's one town, Jabesh Gilead. They didn't send anyone out to battle. I'll tell you what. Now, when we start making stupid decisions, do we make stupid decisions upon stupid decisions? Now, did they go and ask God what they should do here in any of this time? No. They were going to fix it themselves. Ever try to fix something yourself, and then later on you ask your wife, what should I have done here? They're not asking God. They're going to fix it themselves. So what do? We find Jabesh Gilead. They hadn't come out to help them with this battle. And they'd made this oath that they would not get, they would die before they'd give their own daughters to any one of the tribe of Benjamin. So what do? We'll go out. That's verse number 7 that they said that. Verse number 8, there's one that didn't come up. That's going to be Jabesh Gilead who didn't come. Verse number 11, we find that this is what they'll do. They'll go to Jabesh Gilead and they'll destroy every male and every woman who has known a man intimately. So they found in the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead 400 young virgins who did not know a man intimately, and they brought them to the camp of Shiloh, which is the land of Canaan. Jabesh Gilead. Now, you're going to say, have I heard of that before? Yeah, we're going to hear of it later. Their attempt was completely wipe out Jabesh Gilead, but they weren't completely successful because later we're going to find King Saul, who was of what tribe? Benjamin. King Saul was killed, and some men of Jabesh Gilead who went and took his body down, and then David then brought it and buried it. So there's a few left, but there wasn't a whole lot. But they went and they attacked him, and they found how many young girls? 400. Now, I can do simple math. How many young guys are up there on that rock? We're going to have a problem, aren't we? There's a problem. But we'll get to that in just a second. But we find the whole congregation, they sent word to the children of Benjamin who were at the rock of Rimmon and telling them what they had. Now, again, this is looking at commentator Josephus, who is a historian. He writes that these 600 men, they humbled themselves. They confessed that they were in the wrong, and that those men and their homosexuality should have been punished, and all these things. So they came to peace with everyone else, is what he writes, and the reason that this could take place. So the Benjamites, they came back at that time. They gave them the women from Jabesh Gilead, and they're how many short? 200 short. But let's stop and think about these 400. These 400 young ladies. They'd be young ladies, wouldn't they? What's just happened in their lives? Mama and daddy, little brothers, all have been killed. Am I happy? How awful. How awful. You know what sin does? When you do something wrong, well, I'm going to fix this and I'm going to do this over here, and it just starts building on itself and building on itself and building on itself, and all of a sudden it's just an ugly monster, is it not? And that's what the picture we have here is where the hatred and the I'm going to do this, I'm going to myself, it brought much, much sorrow. Yes, Lynn.
Were the people in Jabesh Gilead of various tribes of Israel, or?
I think they're Ephraimites, if I remember right. My little pea brain's not for sure. We can somebody will check that out and let me know, I'm sure.
It doesn't really say in here.
No, and we may have to go back and look somewhere else to find where Jabesh Gilead and who was settled in that area, but my mind wants to tell me it was of Ephraim, is what, if I remember my reading, and I may be.
Because now they're turning on, if it's the tribe of Ephraim, then now they're turning on the tribe of Ephraim, who just chose not to participate in punishing the Benjamites.
Who when they got the message or the memo, whether they're late or what, because whatever happened, they didn't show up. So boy, we're going to show them. So again, it's just the snowball effect of sin and the awfulness that takes place. I remember as a little kid, it's back when they'd show movies on television, sometimes musicals. Do you remember the musical? I think it came out in 1950-something. 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. You remember that? You remember the one brother talking about how we're going to find you wives, and talking about the Sabaean women. Sabaean is what I think the way he pronounced. I'm not sure exactly. He kind of butchered the name of it. But it referred to in Rome. There's an event that took place in Rome as well, that there were some men who needed wives, and there was a festival going on, and they waited till the women were coming out dancing, and this big group of men said, hey, it's time to get a wife. And they grabbed the wife and carried them off. Well, that's the same thing with the Seven Brides for 7 Brothers movie, if you remember that movie. And I remember the movie, even dancing along with it myself when I was a kid, No, I'm not going to sing any songs that go along with it. But here you had these 7 brothers. One brother went off, got married, came back, and the other 6 wanted brothers said, well, let's go. Let's do like the Sabaeans did. And they go and they capture the women, and they go out to their little house out in the country, and there's an avalanche between them in town, and they have their wives there, and then the wives, anyways, it's quite. Anyway, they ended up getting married, but that was after a whole movie worth, right? Here we have, how are we going to find wives for these 200 men? Again, the people grieved for Benjamin. There was a void. Verse number 15 describes a void, and that's a broken wall, a place where an enemy could break through. Here's this emptiness where, there's a problem here of the tribes of Benjamin. And they've came up with a solution. There must be, because here you have a portion of land that has been bestowed upon the Benjaminites. They have conquered a good portion of it. Jebusites are still there. They've conquered a big portion of it, and they settled in there, and now there's no one there to receive this inheritance, this land. And it has to stay within the tribe of Benjamin. These 600 men overnight have become very wealthy. They received all that all their brothers and all their other Benjamites had. It all became that 600 men. You start thinking the 400 that were really sad, maybe it might brighten up a little bit when they got nice things, but you really can't say that. But now they begin looking, how can we find wives for these last 200? And again, that rash vow, we can't give to anyone. Cursed be anyone who gives a bride to Benjamin. No, none of us can. Well, there's a feast down at Shiloh. And very likely this feast is going to be the Feast of Tabernacles. It's one of the major feasts. And during the feast, the young maidens, they celebrate, and they go dancing out through the countryside as they're celebrating this feast. And as they do this, what we can do is those 200 Benjamites that don't have a wife yet, they can go out and they can get them a wife. And we can honestly say, now, because all these people said, oh, we cannot give one of our daughters to marry. We can honestly say, well, we didn't give it to them. They just took it, so we can kind of fix our problems by we're not obligated to keep our oath because they did. It sounds like what the Pharisees done it. You can do this, but we can do this because if we want to be, and I want to do this, so I'm going to do this. So making up laws is what they're doing. So they made plans for this. Verse 21, every man catch a wife for himself, and so they can't complain because they're not guilty of your oaths, is what they go on to verse number 22 and say. So verse 23, we find that they took wives for them who danced, and they caught them, and they rebuilt the cities and came back and dwelt in them. And everyone then went back home, and there was peace. Yes, Lynn?
What tribe is the daughters of Shiloh?
They would be from all the tribes that came in. It's a feast where everybody came in to feast, so they'd be from all over. It would be, but from all over, they'd all said, no one's going to be taking our wives. So they would all be kind of sort of breaking the vow, but not sort of breaking the vow because we kind of made up around where we don't have to keep the vow. So is what they did. We have pointed out, though, can you imagine, kind of the word gets around, there might be someone that's going to take you away tonight if you're out dancing. Catch me, catch me, catch me. Why? Because I'm going to become rich. I'm going to be a Benjaminite of the tribe of Benjamin, and we're going to have loads of money, loads of land. So you kind of wonder, well, all the politics? Yeah, it's politics, isn't it? The working behind the scenes and the planning that goes on behind the scene. One commentator said, it is not known whether or not some of these Shiloh maidens made themselves easy to catch. So, interesting thought. But the closing verse of Judges, kind of the theme that's looked at over and over again. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. There's no king. And a little bit about that. I haven't talked about this a whole lot. Just kind of give a thought here. Samuel likely wrote this. And we know that Samuel did not want to anoint a king over Israel because God's supposed to be their king. That's what God has said. But God says, no, you're going to anoint Israel. So the thought is maybe Samuel wrote this later on after Saul had been anointed with the hopes that if there's a king in Israel, people will be turning their hearts back to God, which we find that did not take place. So maybe that's the reason that. But the bottom line is the statement is, everyone did what is right in their own eyes. And how sad and how wicked it becomes when everyone does what is right in their own eyes. Comments, thoughts, takeaways, other takeaways besides this.
It strikes me at the energy that these people had.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to sling those stones and to wield those swords is not an easy job.
No.
I mean, it was just ongoing day after day.
Yeah. Now, and as you look at the sequence, it probably wasn't 1, 2, 3 days in a row, because it looks there's times where they wept and they prayed to God, and they fasted. So there had been maybe a day or two between these, but still, it would be an exhausting effort. And when you put yourself into an effort that is, they were totally, completely into it, and you can become blinded. You can be blinded to what's taking place when you just become so invested and so in the early morning worship at 8 o'clock, we looked at 2 Corinthians chapter 4 as it describes the temporary things versus the eternal things. And that's what happens. We get so focused in the temporary things, these physical things. Where's all that land, that gold and all that silver that was back there with the tribe of Benjamin? Where is it now? somewhere in the West. It may be over in Sweden. Some of it. It's not. I mean, the riches there are not. It's temporary. And where must we set our sights upon? On the eternal. We've got to be looking to the realm that will last forever and ever and ever. And when we get so, like they were, so fixed upon, what we got to do here and the land and all this, we lose. We lose. Keeping our sights, I have a home eternal in heaven. Other comments, other thoughts? I'm not going to let you out. I talk some more, can't I? You look, going back to excuses that we'll make to justify sin. And I remember when I first heard of businesses requiring their workers to go through almost desensitization. Is that what you'd call it, Paul? Where you're not against, you're not concerned about their lifestyle and their homosexuality, to be accepting of that. And I thought, well, that's the craziest thing. It's big now. I mean, and now you look, it's everywhere. And the scary thing about it is it's stealing our children. Is the influence of the selfish desires and just be what you want to be. You hear about the recent politician that was saying we need to give puberty-blocking drugs to our children until they get old enough and they can decide what gender they're going to be? Is that not insane? Now, we're looking at, and what do I want to do? I want to get my club and go beat the tar out of them. But again, where are we at? We've got to stand for truth, stand for righteousness. We've got to teach our children that there's a world out there that's going to tell you that you need to be whatever you want to be and live however you want to live. We need to let them know that there's right and there's wrong, and we've got to stand up for what is right. Point out what is wrong. And whenever you go and someone at Home Depot or Lowe's, they're a proclaimed whatever they might be, let our children know, and not so much in front of them, but let our children know, they've chosen a lifestyle that's sin, and that hurts God. That hurts Him. We want to love God, and the last thing we want to do is be hurtful to Him. Okay. No, I'm not going to go there. Anything else? Anything else? I want to tell you, I love you. I love you all so very much. And as we look at the Lord's body, the Lord's church, and sometimes there's struggles. Sometimes there's hurt. But we put our trust in God. We keep our focus upon Him and His love and His will for us. And we will be a blessed people. How thankful I am for this guy and this guy and this guy. And how, I'll say it publicly, I apologize sometimes. I'm a hard head. I'm a hard knot in a knotty pine or whatever. And I appreciate your patience and your love for me. And I'm thankful to be serving here together with you. And may we stand up together for God, for His glory, for the eternal home that awaits us. Thank you, everybody. Looking forward to